And thank you, Javier, for such an interesting discussion. As you heard, my name is Edith Kimani, and I'm going to go straight into it. When our next speaker started his practice as an advocate, aged just 21, the bulk of his work involved defending people charged under racist statutes and repressive security laws in South Africa. Years later, in 1988, he would be blown up by a bomb placed in his car while in exile in Maputo by South African security agents. And in the process, he lost his arm and the sight of an eye. Undeterred, he returned back to South Africa and took an active part in the negotiations which led South Africa to becoming a constitutional democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, Albie Sachs knows a thing or two about negotiating through difficult times and compromise, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about for the next 15 minutes. So please help me welcome him all the way from South Africa, Justice Albie Sachs.
Hello, everybody.
So, Justice, it's really a pleasure to have you here. Now, in one of your many interviews, you said that nothing about fighting for freedom is easy. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you paid for it dearly, nearly with your life. But you were very convicted about the position you took, but so too was your perceived enemy. So my first question is, how do you begin talks with someone who believes you should be dead just for holding a different view?
Can I be a little bit provocative even before answering the question?
Absolutely.
The word compromise. I'm unhappy with the word compromise. In the English language, compromise can be positive, it can be negative. You say somebody's compromised. It's a negative thing. So I prefer the word accommodate to compromise. Compromise, you give way maybe on some point of principle for transactional reasons to make a breakthrough. Accommodate means you understand the other and you find a way of living together in one community, in one society. And I thought I might highlight the particular role that our Truth and Reconciliation Commission played in permitting a transition in South Africa from a very cruel, racist, overtly racist apartheid society with 90% of the people excluded from the vote, dispossessed from the land, a long struggle for liberty. Our leaders been all in jail, in prison, people had been tortured, I'd been blown up as one little example. How did we come to sit down with what we call the enemy and find an accommodation in terms of which we could live together in one country? Would that be okay?
Yeah, but I'd like you to really keep it brief because unfortunately we only have now 5 minutes.
Okay, go ahead then.
All right, so speaking of, you said compromise is not the word you want to use, accommodate. You speak about your could have been murderer, Mr. Henry. And it's a very fascinating story of how you met him and eventually you shook hands with him. And you talk about how you humanized one another. How do societies that have existed side by side, in suspicion, deeply isolated and divided, learn from you and start this process themselves after negotiating?
Okay, I think there are two concepts that maybe I can contribute. The one is the concept of what I call soft vengeance. When I was lying in my hospital bed in London recovering, and I received a letter saying, "Don't worry, Comrade Albie, we can avenge you." I thought, avenge me? Are we going to cut off the right arms? I lost my right arm. Are we going to blind in one eye? If we get democracy, if we get freedom, if we get the rule of law, that will be my soft vengeance. And this idea of soft vengeance is very, very powerful, very strong, because it means you accomplish the goals that you set out to accomplish, but you don't do it by doing to them what they've done to you. Then you're just carrying on at the same level. Soft vengeance is not simply forgiveness, it's transcendence. It's the triumph of your goals and your ideals. And the ultimate objective is always how can we live together in one country in South Africa, side by side, in terms of neighbors.
So,
The other big thing, yeah,
in
go
that
on.
case, do you think that forgiveness is essential in the accommodating process? Is it possible to
Yes,
sit down? Yeah.
yeah, I don't like the word forgiveness. It means I, being all powerful, forgive you. I prefer the word transcendence, where you transcend out of the bitterness, the ugliness, the violence of the situation, and you achieve the goals that you want in a principled way. So I didn't forgive Henry, the person who organized the bomb in my car, but he came to see me. He went to our Truth Commission. He told the truth. So he's now becoming a stronger person without the burden of the horrible things he's done. And I'm feeling a safer person because we're living together in the same country.
Now, I'm sure that at the time when you shook his hand, there must have been people around you who thought, how did you do that? How could you do that? And indeed, I've just come back from South Africa where descendants of the freedom fighters say, how could they have done that to us, sold our country, this very anti-Mandela sentiment? How do you get buy-in from people who don't agree with the negotiators?
Well, I respect and understand people who felt, how can we negotiate? But negotiations gave us a country, gave us speech, gave us the vote, gave us dignity, gave us opportunities, gave us a constitution. And now the project is to use the constitution to get the further economic liberation, to restore rights to land, to ensure that there's less poverty, there's less crime, there's less violence in the country. So we reconfigured the country completely and gave even those who are very critical of the constitution an opportunity to express their criticism.
So, the world you live in, the legal world, operates in the language of rationale. Here, a room full of journalists, we operate in the language of emotion. How do we cover these very controversial issues in a way that promotes understanding and compromise within a rational space?
Can I just offer something that's indirectly relevant? And that emerged from our Truth Commission process. And I was very puzzled. The truth came pouring out. The commission went round the country listening to the people. People cried, lamentations. They spoke in their own languages of terrible things that had happened to them, to their children, to their fathers, their brothers. It was enormously powerful, and I felt the truth was pouring out. At the same time, the O.J. Simpson trial under due process of law in the United States was being proceeded with, and we didn't know what the truth was. So I started wondering, what is this thing, truth? And I came up with the idea of four kinds of truth. There's evidential truth. You have a small area with variables, and you measure the variables over time. Forensic truth is like that. Then there's logical truth, the truth in a statement, purely from logic. The third kind of truth is experiential truth, the experience that people undergo and feel and direct their lives very much. It's phenomenological. And the fourth kind of truth is dialogical truth. It's the impact of all the different kinds of truth. And the strength of our Truth Commission was its experiential and dialogical character. The strength of a law case is based on narrow evidence and logic. It's very, very limited in its scope. What was extraordinary about our Truth Commission was the experiential, phenomenological side, and the journalists played a huge role in communicating to the general public the lamentations, the cries, the sorrow, even the people who came forward to acknowledge what they'd done, to get amnesty. There they were telling the truth in their own voices, in their own ways. And I think it's very helpful not to reduce truth to simply one of those four categories, and to see the journalistic role in different ways, evidence-based, of course, logical, yes, experiential, very powerful, and dialogical, all the different components interacting with each other. It made a huge impact on our society at the time. It wasn't the report that mattered so much. It was hearing the voices of the people, narrating their life experiences, the experiences those close to them. And happily, we had a very powerful team of journalists through radio, through television, through the press, communicating on a daily basis and a weekly basis the experience of the Truth Commission.
Justice Sachs, I can't thank you enough for your time. Thank you for your insights, and thank you to the audience for your attention.